Hi friends, welcome to today's video. I'm Jeanette with Vivo Vintage Designs. If you're new to my channel, welcome. On this channel we learn alcohol, ink, and watercolor together, and occasionally I'll throw in a crafty art DIY project. So I hope that you enjoy this video and that you consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming tutorials. So now let's dive into it. Welcome to today's video. Today we are going to paint some whimsical flowers. I have not done this often and I love painting flowers, but I've been into the landscape so much that today I decided that I was going to actually paint some flowers for you. And this is very, very easy to do. And I will provide you with an outline that at the end of the video, you can pause the video, take a screenshot, print it out, and use it as your traceable. So every morning I sit at my computer, go over emails and such, and then I come up with an idea for a painting. And these are the two that I drew, but I decided to go with this one. So if you don't have a light box, which is how I traced it onto my paper, you can simply take the image, take a pencil, just a regular pencil. This happens to be just graphite. It's got no wood. You scribble on the back and then you tape it to your paper and you can trace it. Once you trace it, do use an eraser to remove any smudges. So my image here is pretty dark and that's great, but I want to lighten the lines because I don't want my pencil lines to show through the watercolor once I have painted it. So I'm going to use my kneadable eraser and I'm just going to lightly go over some of these lines to lighten them. I can still see it, but it should not show too much through the watercolor. And for today's painting, I'll be using my Art Nouveau Kuretake Gansai Tombi paints, but if you don't have these paints, use whatever watercolors you have. And I'll be using a couple of different sizes of silver black velvet brushes. I have a 12, an 8, and a 4. I also have a couple of other brushes. Again, they're silver black velvet in different sizes on the side, just in case I need them. Okay. So I think that's light enough that I should be okay. And I want to create a border for this, so I'm going to use a little washi tape to create a border. Now I want to create a background for this painting, and let me get my little swatch card out here so I can see what colors I want to use. All right, I already see the background that I want. So first thing I'm going to do is spray down my watercolors just to activate them a little bit. I find that with these watercolors, they activate very quickly, so I don't need to use a lot of water. And getting back to this paper, I am using this Daler Rowney paper. I just happen to have this. This is mixed media paper, but I have used it in watercolor in the past. I'll show you a couple of the little paintings that I did, and I love the way it works with watercolor. So these are just a couple of little, obviously nothing, paintings that I did in the past using this paper, and I like it. So we're going to use this today. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I want to create a background, and for the background I'm going to use a larger brush, and I want to use this grayish blue, it's called. Now you can use the wet and wet technique. I suppose that would work well, but I am going to just wing it. I want it to be soft, not too hard, not too dark. So I'm just going to pick up the paint straight from the palette, and then as I move across the paper, I'll add a little bit of water to my brush and soften it up a little bit. So it's going to be darker around the flowers. And what's nice is that this paint reactivates on the paper very easily. So if you get any hard lines, you can remove them without a lot of effort. And you'll see as I go along what I mean. I think that's one of the reasons, there are many, that I enjoy using this paint so much. So there's a hard line, and look how easily I reactivated that paint to soften it up. Okay, so my background is finished. I'm just adding a little bit more color here and there now. All right, so now let's get to the flowers. For the flowers, we're going to use very diluted color. And I think I chose yellow, red, and violet. And I really don't have a yellow here. Let me see if I have another palette with, I do, of course I do, with a yellow color that I might want to use. Okay, I think I'm going to use this one. So let me spray this down a little bit. And again, you don't have to have these colors. Whatever you have is what you should use. All right, so I'm going to start with the flowers first. And I'm going to switch to this. This is a size 8. So I want to make sure that I clean my brush well. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of this lemon yellow. And I'm going to start with, let's see, this flower. So if it looks too dark, just clean your brush in the water and move that color around. Now I'm noticing that perhaps it wasn't a good idea to use this paper because this paper is not really good for, it's not very thick. I should have used like a Canson or something like that. So it's starting to buckle. No big deal. I can flatten that later on. All right, so there's my first yellow flower. And now I'm going to let that sit for a little while. And then I'm going to come back with a darker yellow. You can use the cadmium yellow. I'm going to put a little bit of that on here. It's a darker yellow than we put down. And then I'm going to switch to the smaller brush because I'm going to follow those lines that I drew, the little swirls. And you have to do this while the paper is still wet because you want it to bleed out a little bit. And I'm going to pick this up in a heavier consistency. So go around your swirls all the way, even around the outside like that. And again, don't worry if you go outside of the lines. It's okay. It'll all work out in the end, I promise. So if you need to go over it a second time, try to do it while it's still wet. And if I had done this on like 100% cotton watercolor paper or even the Canson watercolor paper, I think this would have worked better. But I really wanted to keep it in a sketchbook like this. All in all, that's pretty good. I shouldn't complain. Okay, I want to throw some purple in there. So I have cobalt violet, and that's a really pretty color. And I can just water that down a little bit by picking up some extra water on my brush. Okay, by now, this one should be dry enough. So I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to pick up the cadmium yellow straight from the palette, and I'm going to start going around my little swirls. You want the darker yellow to bleed out a little bit. That's why we're doing this while it's still wet. If you want more defined lines, you can do it once it's dry. And these flowers, I mean, you don't have to use my traceable. These are really easy to create. It's just a circle with a swirl in the center, and you can do your own composition. All right, so now I'm going to mix a little bit of this cobalt violet, and I'm going to use a little bit of the ultramarine to mix into it to make it just a little bit darker. And this may be a little too dry now, but that's okay. There is really nothing wrong that you can do with this style of painting. let's start painting some of the leaves that aren't touching anything. So for my leaves, I'm going to use sap green, and then I'll use hooker's green or a sap green deep to outline them. So this is just the sap green. So you can see I have too much water on there, so I'm lifting some of it up and dabbing it on my paper towel. And now I'm going to pick up the sap green deep in a heavy consistency. So I'm using very little water. And let's outline that while it's still wet, so we do get a little bit of that bleeding. And I'm going to go around and fill in some of these leaves, and you can even use like the sap green light. If you have this set, you can use the lighter colors, any shades of green that you have that you like, and then just make sure that you have a darker green to go around it to create the outline. Okay, so all the leaves are painted, all the flowers are painted. Now while we wait for that all to dry, let's focus on the vase. So for the vase, I want to use, I'm thinking like a grayish color. I have this gray color here, and I'm thinking I may just use that. And for this, I may use the wet and wet technique. So I'm going to go around and wet down the entire vase area. And of course, you don't have to use gray. You can use whatever color you like. Pick up a little bit of that gray. And I'm going to start putting it around the outside and letting it bleed towards the inside. I'm going to pick a little bit up of this blue-gray deep just to go around the outside here like this. And then I'll blend that in just a moment. Let me clean my brush off, blot it down, and then just go around and soften that up a little bit. Make sure that color bleeds in there a little bit more. Then I'm just going to bring some of that color down like this and blend it all together. And if you want, you can lift some areas for your highlight like that. And that's it. That's all you need. All right, so now let's go back and create some stems. I'm going to take a little bit of the light sap green, and I'm going to start painting in my stems. And once I have that stem in, and while the paint is still wet, I'm going to pick up a little bit of the darker sap green, and I'm going to run it along one side. Okay, now we have to wait for this to dry completely. Okay, now that my painting is dry, I am using a 0.30 or a size 2 Micron pen, and I'm going to start outlining and creating a little definition. And of course, you don't have to do this. You can completely skip this step and your painting will be still beautiful, but I like to outline. I think it adds another dimension to the painting that I really like. And this just helps to define your elements. So if you went outside a line, it doesn't matter because this Micron pen fixes everything. While we are nearing the end of this video, I hope that you enjoyed it and that you give it a try. If you have any questions about the techniques or products you've seen me use in this video, please let me know in the comment section. I'll always get back to you. And check the description box and the comment section for links to the products used. I also hope that you consider joining our Facebook group, Vivo Vintage Design Tutorials, where you can post your versions of the paintings and techniques learned on this channel. We have an incredible group of members. I'm very active. So if you ever have any questions or get stuck on something, you can always reach out to me there. And here is the best part, removing that tape. Thank you so much for watching. Stick around till the end for your traceable, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks again. Bye.